The streets of Manhattan glistened under the soft glow of street lamps as Olivia Hayes wiped down the last table at Sunrise Diner. Her hands smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and burger grease, the scent of 12 hours on her feet serving others with a smile that hid the bone-deep exhaustion settling in her chest. Outside, the neon sign flickered weakly against the darkness, the S in Sunrise blinking irregularly like it had been doing for months now. Another repair bill she couldn't afford. Another reminder that her parents' legacy was slipping through her fingers one broken appliance at a time. The weight of unpaid bills and dwindling customers pressed against her shoulders as she stacked chairs upside down on tables. 3 years since her father's heart attack left her with a struggling business and a younger brother to support through college. And tonight, like most nights, the register barely covered tomorrow's food delivery. Olivia reached for her keys, whispering a quiet, "Another day done," to the empty diner, a ritual that somehow kept her going. The clock above the counter read 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes early, but who would notice? Who would care that Sunrise Diner closed its doors before midnight for once? She had almost turned the lock when it happened. 3 sharp, deliberate knocks that echoed through the empty diner. Olivia froze, keys dangling from suddenly trembling fingers as she peered through the glass door into the dim street beyond. He stood beneath the flickering neon, tall and imposing in a perfectly tailored black suit that seemed to absorb the surrounding light. His broad shoulders filled the doorway even before he stepped closer. Dark hair swept back with just enough calculated disorder to look dangerous rather than disheveled. Everything about him radiated authority, from his straight posture to the way his gaze never wavered as he watched her through the glass. This wasn't someone looking for a late-night meal. This was someone who expected doors to open when he knocked, someone accustomed to getting exactly what he wanted. Olivia's first instinct was to point at the closed sign and walk away. Every self-preservation alarm in her body screamed to ignore him, to pretend she hadn't seen the expensive watch glinting on his wrist, or the intensity in his eyes that somehow pierced through the glass and pinned her in place. Instead, she found herself stepping forward, drawn by something she couldn't name, curiosity, perhaps, or the strange magnetic pull that radiated from him even through a locked door. Her hand hesitated on the deadbolt for just a moment before turning it, a decision that would change everything. The stranger's lips curved into the barest hint of a smile as the door swung open, not warm enough to be friendly, but enough to reveal perfect teeth and a dimple in his right cheek. "Dinner for 2, he said, his voice deep and smooth like aged whiskey, carrying the kind of quiet authority that never needed to be raised to be heard. Olivia's throat went dry as she met his gaze, eyes so dark they appeared almost black in the dim light, studying her with an intensity that made her heart stumble against her ribs. "We're closed," she managed, the words sounding weak even to her own ears. "Please," he said, the word somehow both request and command. "I've had a long day, and yours looks even longer. I'm willing to pay generously for the inconvenience." As if to demonstrate, he slid a folded bill across the threshold that made Olivia's eyes widen, enough to cover a week's worth of groceries, just for one late-night meal. The bell above the door chimed softly as Olivia stepped aside, a sound that had always meant welcome but now seemed like a warning. The stranger entered with measured steps, his presence immediately making the modest diner feel smaller, as if the walls themselves were shrinking back to accommodate him. He moved with a kind of controlled power, every gesture deliberate as he surveyed the space. The vintage photographs on the walls, the worn red vinyl booths, the specials still written in Olivia's looping handwriting on the chalkboard. His gaze lingered on each detail as though memorizing it, cataloging her world piece by piece. "Sit anywhere you'd like," Olivia said, tucking the folded bill into her apron pocket as she tried to regain some semblance of control. She watched as he chose the booth farthest from the windows, his back to the wall, positioning himself with a clear view of both the entrance and the kitchen door. He removed his suit jacket with practiced ease, draping it carefully beside him to reveal a crisp black shirt and the subtle bulge of what Olivia immediately recognized as a shoulder holster. Her breath caught in her throat. Not just a stranger then, but a dangerous one, armed and deliberately seated in her empty diner at midnight. "I didn't catch your name," she said, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice as she placed a menu before him, noticing the faint scars across his knuckles, the kind that came from years of violence rather than kitchen accidents like her own. "Vincent," he replied after a moment's consideration, as though deciding whether to give her a real name or not. "And you're Olivia Hayes, who inherited this place 3 years ago when Joseph Hayes passed unexpectedly." You've been keeping it afloat through sheer determination ever since. Cold fear washed through her veins at his words. Not just that he knew her name and history, but the casual way he delivered this information, as though her life was an open file he'd studied before arriving. "How do you know that?" she asked, gripping her order pad too tightly. "I make it my business to know things about my territory," Vincent answered, with that same almost smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Sunrise Diner has been a landmark in this neighborhood for over 40 years. Your father built something special here." The mention of her father softened something in Olivia, despite her better judgment. "What can I get you?" she asked, sliding back into the familiar script of waitress and customer, seeking refuge in the routine she knew by heart. "Surprise me," he said, closing the menu without glancing at it. "Something real. Not perfect, just authentic. The kind of meal that reminds you of home, not the kind designed to impress." His request carried a note of weariness beneath the command, a glimpse of something almost vulnerable behind the power. Olivia nodded and retreated to the kitchen, grateful for the temporary barrier between them as she tried to process what was happening. Her hands moved automatically, preparing her father's signature meatloaf with garlic mashed potatoes, comfort food that had sustained the neighborhood through decades of late nights and early mornings. As she cooked, she caught herself glancing through the service window, watching as Vincent sat perfectly still, his posture relaxed yet alert. He didn't check his phone or fidget like most customers. Instead, he simply existed in the space, present in a way that made her acutely aware of every sound, every movement, every breath between them. The next evening arrived with a sense of inevitability when, at precisely 11:58 p.m., Vincent returned. Olivia told herself she hadn't been watching the clock, hadn't chosen to stay late to finish inventory that could have waited until morning, hadn't worn her hair down instead of in its usual practical bun. This time, she didn't hesitate at the door, unlocking it before he even knocked, a silent acknowledgement of whatever unspoken arrangement had formed between them. "Same table?" she asked, trying to sound casual despite the nervous flutter in her chest. Vincent's dark gaze traveled over her face, lingering for a heartbeat too long before he nodded. "Your meatloaf was excellent," he said, following her to the corner booth. "Best I've had since my grandmother's," and she would have considered that high praise. In the kitchen, Olivia prepared grilled salmon with lemon butter sauce, wondering why she was putting extra care into the presentation, why her hands trembled slightly as she arranged asparagus on the plate. This wasn't a date, she reminded herself sternly, just a strange man paying well for late-night service. When she emerged with his meal, Vincent had rolled up his sleeves, revealing strong forearms marked with faded scars that told stories she both feared and wanted to hear. The shoulder holster was still there, a constant reminder of the danger sitting at her father's best table. "Join me," he said, surprising her as he gestured to the empty seat across from him. It wasn't a request, but wasn't quite a command either. Something in between that left room for refusal, but somehow made it difficult to imagine doing so. Olivia hesitated, dish towel clutched in her hand like a shield. Every rational thought warned against sitting down, against allowing this boundary to blur, but she found herself sliding into the booth anyway, drawn by curiosity stronger than caution. "You're not what I expected," Vincent said after several minutes of silence, his fork poised midair. His eyes were calculating but not cold, assessing her with an intensity that should have made her uncomfortable, but instead made her feel truly seen for the first time in years. The diner felt unnervingly quiet around them, the usual humming of refrigerators and ice machines fading into background noise as Olivia gathered her courage. "And what exactly did you expect from a diner owner in this part of town?" Vincent set down his fork, fingers tapping once against the table before going still. "Someone who would be intimidated by me," he answered with unexpected honesty. "Someone who would serve me quickly and hope I'd leave, not someone who'd cook me a meal that tastes like home." Their conversation flowed surprisingly easily after that, weaving between safe topics like the neighborhood's history and the challenges of running a small business. Vincent listened with genuine interest, his questions revealing a sharp mind behind the dangerous exterior. It was nearly 2 a.m. when he finally stood to leave, placing another folded bill on the table that Olivia knew without checking would be far too generous. Their fingers brushed as she reached for it, the contact brief but electric, sending an unexpected jolt up her arm that made her breath catch. Over the following weeks, Vincent's midnight visits became a ritual that Olivia anticipated with equal parts excitement and dread. Each night brought new conversations, new glimpses into his world of power and control. New moments where their hands would accidentally touch and linger for heartbeats longer than necessary. Rumors spread quickly through the neighborhood. Whispers about the expensive black car that appeared outside Sunrise Diner after closing, about the man everyone knew as the gentleman, the undisputed ruler of Manhattan's West Side, whose name was spoken with equal parts fear and respect. Marco, Olivia's cook of 15 years, cornered her in the storage room one morning, his usually jovial face creased with worry. "You know who he is, right?" he asked in a hushed tone. "Vincent Caravello doesn't just visit random diners for the food. He's dangerous, Olivia." Olivia tried to dismiss Marco's concerns, but his words echoed in her mind that night as she waited for Vincent's now familiar knock. She'd Googled his name after the third visit, finding only vague references to real estate holdings and charity galas, nothing concrete enough to explain the fear he inspired. When he arrived, something was different. Tension radiated from him, evident in the tightness of his jaw and the way his eyes constantly scanned the diner. "Is something wrong?" Olivia asked as she placed his usual coffee in front of him, black with 1 sugar. "You have new customers," Vincent replied, nodding toward the window where a dark sedan had been parked across the street for the past hour. "They're not here for your excellent pie." Fear gripped Olivia's throat as she followed his gaze, suddenly understanding the weight of Marco's warnings. "Who are they?" she whispered, hand trembling slightly as she set down the coffee pot. Vincent's expression hardened, the warmth she'd grown accustomed to vanishing behind a mask of cold calculation. "The Rossetti family has been trying to expand their territory. They're sending a message by watching a place they know I frequent." The next morning, Olivia arrived to find a man in an expensive suit leaning against her counter, twirling her spare keys around his finger. "Vincent sends his apologies for the intrusion," he said with practiced politeness. "I'm Daniel, head of his security detail. We've installed some additional precautions overnight." Daniel walked her through the diner, pointing out new security cameras disguised as smoke detectors, a reinforced back door, and a panic button installed beneath the counter. "For your protection," he explained, though the words felt more like a prison sentence than a comfort. That night, 2 unfamiliar men sat at the counter throughout her shift, ordering nothing but coffee which they barely touched. Their eyes tracked every customer, every movement, their presence a constant reminder that Olivia's world had irrevocably changed. When Vincent arrived after closing, Olivia confronted him immediately. "You can't do this," she said, gesturing toward the security cameras. "You can't just take over my life, my business, without asking." Vincent's expression softened, the mask of the ruthless businessman slipping to reveal genuine concern. "I'm trying to protect you," he said, reaching for her hand across the counter. "The Rossettis won't hesitate to use you to get to me, and I can't allow that to happen." Olivia pulled her hand away, tears of frustration burning behind her eyes. "I never asked for any of this," she whispered. "I never asked to be part of your war, your world. I just wanted to serve you dinner." For the first time, guilt flashed across Vincent's face, quickly replaced by determination. "I'll have the security detail removed if that's what you want," he said finally. "But promise me you'll use the panic button if anything feels wrong, anything at all." The following days passed in tense silence, the diner emptier than usual, as regular customers noticed the shift in atmosphere. Olivia caught whispers between tables, speculation about gang activity, about protection rackets, about the Caravello family's newest acquisition. Her younger brother Tim called from college, voice tight with worry. "There are rumors about Sunrise, Liv," he said. "People saying it's become a mob hangout. Is everything okay? Do you need me to come home?" Olivia reassured him with practiced lies, ignoring the weight pressing against her chest. After hanging up, she stared at the register's pitiful contents. Fewer customers meant fewer sales, and fewer sales meant more financial pressure mounting by the day. That night, Vincent didn't come, nor the next, or the night after that. The absence of his midnight visits left a strange emptiness that Olivia refused to acknowledge, telling herself she should feel relieved rather than abandoned. On the 4th night, as she was closing up alone, 3 men entered just before midnight. They wore expensive suits similar to Vincent's, but carried themselves differently, something predatory in their movements that sent alarm bells ringing through Olivia's mind. "We've heard so much about this place," the tallest one said, his smile never reaching his cold eyes. "Vincent Caravello's favorite late-night spot. We thought we should experience it for ourselves." Olivia's fingers found the panic button beneath the counter, pressing it firmly as she forced herself to maintain eye contact. "I'm sorry, but we're closed." You'll have to come back tomorrow during business hours." The man's smile widened as he stepped closer, reaching across the counter to grab her wrist. "We're not here for food, sweetheart. We're here to send a message to Caravello about overstepping boundaries, and you're going to help us deliver it." Glass shattered across the diner floor as the back door burst open, revealing Vincent with 4 men flanking him, weapons drawn. His eyes locked on the man gripping Olivia's wrist, a murderous rage transforming his usually composed features into something primal and terrifying. What followed happened so quickly Olivia could barely process it. Vincent's men neutralizing the intruders with practiced efficiency, securing the diner perimeter, speaking in clipped professional tones that betrayed years of similar operations. The threat was contained in less than a minute, leaving broken furniture and trembling hands in its wake. "Are you hurt?" Vincent asked, his voice tight as he crossed the distance between them, hands hovering near her shoulders as though afraid to touch her. His eyes scanned her for injuries, the concern in them more intimate than any caress. Olivia shook her head mutely, shock freezing her vocal cords as she watched Vincent's men escort the Rossetti intruders out the back door. She didn't want to think about where they were taking them or what would happen next. "I never should have left you unprotected," Vincent said, self-recrimination evident in the hard set of his jaw. "I thought distancing myself would keep you safe, but I was wrong." His hand finally made contact with her cheek, thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. The gentleness of his touch contrasted sharply with the violence she'd just witnessed, making her question which was the real Vincent Caravello. Daniel appeared at Vincent's side, whispering something urgently that made Vincent's expression harden. "We need to move," he said to Olivia, decision already made. "It's not safe here anymore." Before she could protest, Vincent was guiding her toward the back exit, his arm a protective band around her waist. "Just until we resolve this," he promised, misreading her resistance. "We'll keep you safe at my penthouse." The city blurred past the tinted windows of Vincent's car as they sped through the night, Olivia's mind racing faster than the vehicle carrying her away from everything familiar. She thought of her brother Tim, of Marco, and the morning staff who had arrived to find the diner closed, of the life she was being pulled from with each passing block. Vincent's penthouse occupied the top floor of a sleek high-rise overlooking Central Park, a world removed from her modest apartment above the diner. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a glittering cityscape that seemed both beautiful and threatening from this height, like looking down on a bed of diamonds mixed with broken glass. "You'll be safe here," Vincent said, leading her through rooms decorated in shades of gray and black, minimalist and expensive in a way that revealed nothing personal about their owner. His home felt more like a hotel suite than a place someone actually lived. Security cameras monitored every entrance, men in suits stationed at strategic points throughout the building, the constant presence of protection that felt simultaneously reassuring and suffocating. Olivia wondered if this was how Vincent always lived, surrounded by barriers meant to keep dangers out, but that also kept him locked within. Sunrise Diner burned to the ground 3 days later, flames consuming 40 years of memories in a single night. Olivia watched the news footage on Vincent's massive television screen, tears streaming silently down her face as firefighters battled hopelessly against the inferno that had already gutted her family's legacy. "The Rossettis," Vincent confirmed before she could ask, his voice carrying a coldness she hadn't heard before. "This is their answer to what happened at the diner, their way of proving they can reach what matters to me." His words hung in the air between them, the implicit admission that she mattered to him, that somehow in those midnight dinners, she had become more than just a woman who served him food. She had become a weakness in his carefully constructed armor. Vincent made calls throughout the night, speaking in coded phrases and clipped commands, while Olivia sat wrapped in a blanket on his leather sofa, trying to process the reality that her life as she knew it had literally gone up in flames. By morning, Vincent's plan was in motion. His men positioned throughout the city, alliances reinforced, territories secured. "Stay here," he instructed, pressing a kiss to her forehead that felt like both a promise and a goodbye. "Whatever happens, don't leave the penthouse until I return." Hours stretched into an agonizing day of silence, Olivia pacing the luxurious prison of Vincent's home while Daniel stood guard, his expression revealing nothing about what might be happening in the city below. The sunset painted the sky in shades of fire that reminded her too vividly of the diner's destruction. When Vincent finally returned well past midnight, the evidence of violence was written across his body, a cut above his eye, bruised knuckles, a stiffness in his movements that spoke of hidden injuries. Olivia rushed to him without thinking, hands reaching to steady him as he crossed the threshold. "It's done," he said simply, allowing her to guide him to the sofa, his usual composure fractured by exhaustion. "The Rossettis won't trouble us again." Olivia didn't ask for details, didn't want to know what done meant in Vincent's world. Instead, she carefully cleaned the cut on his face, her touch gentle against skin accustomed to harsher treatment. As morning light filtered through the windows, Vincent made another call, this one different from the commanding tone he used with his men. "I need to speak with Roberto Rossetti," he said, voice steady as he met Olivia's questioning gaze. Not as enemies, as businessmen finding a solution. The meeting was arranged for neutral territory, an old church converted to a restaurant where violence was prohibited by ancient understanding. Vincent dressed with particular care, his suit armor against whatever awaited him. "Why are you doing this?" Olivia asked, as she helped straighten his tie, a domestic gesture that felt strangely natural despite the circumstances. "You said it was finished last night." "Some things can't be solved with violence," Vincent replied, his hand catching hers against his chest where she could feel his heartbeat. "Some wars need to end with words instead of blood, especially when the cost becomes too high." Roberto Rossetti arrived flanked by advisors, his lined face bearing the weathered dignity of an old-world patriarch. The two men regarded each other across the table with the wary respect of opponents who recognized their equal. "My son acted without my authorization," Roberto began after formalities were exchanged. "The diner should never have been touched. Such actions dishonor our traditions." Vincent nodded once, accepting the closest thing to an apology a man like Roberto Rossetti could offer. "And my retaliation was necessary, but regrettable," he countered. "We've both lost valuable assets and men in a conflict that benefits neither family." The negotiation progressed through appetizers and wine, territory lines redrawn over main courses, peace terms solidified with espresso and dessert. Olivia watched from a distance, marveling at how warfare could be conducted with silverware instead of firearms. Vincent's phone vibrated against the table, drawing his attention to a message from Daniel, confirming the safety measures at the new Sunrise location were complete. Security systems discreetly installed beneath rustic wooden panels, panic buttons integrated seamlessly into vintage-style fixtures, protection hidden beneath normalcy. Beyond the negotiations and business arrangements, something fundamental had shifted in Vincent over these weeks. The man who had built walls around himself for protection now seemed determined to build bridges instead. Olivia had watched this transformation with quiet wonder, seeing how he consulted her on decisions he once would have made unilaterally. The weight of her father's watch pressed against Olivia's wrist, a treasured possession salvaged from the apartment above the burned diner. Time had new meaning now, no longer measured in unpaid bills and dwindling customers, but in possibilities that stretched before them like the glittering city skyline. In the car ride back to Vincent's penthouse, his hand found hers in the darkness, fingers intertwining with a tenderness that still surprised her. "My grandfather always said true power isn't about control," he confessed quietly. "It's about creation, building something that outlasts you." As papers were signed and hands reluctantly shaken, Roberto paused, his gaze shifting to Olivia. "She must be special," he observed, "for Vincent Caravello to choose diplomacy over dominance. My wife changed me the same way, many years ago." 1 month later, construction began at the site of Sunrise Diner, not just rebuilding what was lost, but creating something new. Vincent had acquired the adjacent properties, expanding the footprint to include a proper restaurant alongside the classic diner counter. "Your father's legacy with your vision," Vincent explained as he showed Olivia the architectural plans, his arm comfortably around her waist in a way that no longer felt dangerous but necessary. "I want to give you back what was taken because of me." Olivia traced the blueprints with trembling fingers, throat tight with emotion. "This is too much," she whispered, overwhelmed by the gesture that revealed more about Vincent's feelings than any words could have. "It's not enough," he countered, turning her gently to face him. "Nothing could be enough to compensate for dragging you into my world. But I want to build something with you, Olivia. Something that isn't about power or territory or old vendettas." As the walls of the new Sunrise rose from the ashes of the old, so too did something unexpected bloom between them. Not just passion or protection, but partnership. Vincent brought his business acumen to complement Olivia's warmth and vision, their strengths intertwining like their fingers when they walked the construction site. The grand reopening drew crowds from across the city, curious onlookers, loyal old customers, and a carefully balanced mix of Caravello and Rossetti associates, demonstrating the new piece. Vincent stood slightly apart, watching with quiet pride as Olivia cut the ribbon. Later that night, after the guests had gone and staff had cleaned up, Vincent and Olivia sat alone at a corner booth, the same position as their first midnight meal, though now the booth was new and the diner transformed. He reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "Dinner for two," he said with a genuine smile that reached his eyes. No longer the dangerous stranger at her door, but a man who had chosen to build rather than destroy. "Every night, if you'll have me." Thank you all for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please write in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Your support is essential for me to continue creating content like this.